So let's start with the cover story tonight. For decades, China's military strategy has included a strange sort of hybrid warfare. At its core is deception and the use of civilians as a shield for aggression. In the South China Sea, where China has claims on Philippine Islands and also is actively trying to change the facts on the ground by taking them over, Beijing has been using fishermen to harass its adversaries in the South China Sea. Now, these fishermen, called the Little Blue Men, are in the pay of Beijing and they act on Beijing's orders. There have been countless reports from different areas about this tactic, countless testimonies of sailors and naval officers. But of course, Beijing has consistently denied deploying what have been dubbed as the Little Blue Men of the Chinese Navy. Last week, its lies were exposed. We got the most compelling evidence about the existence of the Little Blue Men. It's a private militia that China claims mainly comprises of fishermen and has been doing the PLA's dirty work in the South China Sea. It all started with this video. It showed a Chinese Coast Guard vessel firing a water cannon on a smaller Philippine military supply boat. This happened in a disputed area in the South China Sea, and interestingly, the Chinese vessel was not alone. Now look at this video now. Watch closely. There's another vessel besides the two that we mentioned. It's a blue-hulled vessel that resembles a fishing boat. The Philippines says that there were multiple other such fishing boats nearby. They were apparently aiding the Chinese Coast Guard. Why? What business did they have in this encounter? Why would fishermen, if that is what they were, fishermen engage in this type of intimidation? The fact is, these Little Blue Men were not fishermen at all. They are what are known as the Little Blue Men of the Chinese Navy, a private militia that China has now resorted to using more and more for dominating the high seas. Now, China pays these Little Blue Men. Now, these boats are part of China's irregular militia. The people operating them are called Little Blue Men, and they are very similar to Russia's Little Green Men that were used during Moscow's takeover of Crimea, only that the Little Blue Men are not as famous as Russia's Little Green Men are. So who exactly are they? Well, they're part of an unofficial force that China uses to push its territorial claims. The force is officially called China's People's Armed Forces Maritime Militia, or the PAFMM. Its members are recruited from fishing communities, but they are part of a well-networked defense force. They use vessels that may appear to be civilian, but they are used for ramming and damaging other vessels. They're also trained to use small arms and anti-air weapons by the regular maritime forces. And lastly, they're called Little Blue Men because of the small size and the blue color of the boats that are deployed in this case. So how long has Beijing been using them? Well, for as long as the People's Republic of China has existed. You see, this wing, the PAFMM, or the Little Blue Men, was first created back in the 1950s. The goal was to defend China's eastern coastline. Defend them from whom? Well, from the forces of Chiang Kai-shek, the former leader of the Republic of China, or the ROC, who had retreated to Taiwan after losing the civil war. Now, China also has utilized them as an offensive force during the Battle of Paracel Islands in 1974. They helped the PLA reach the islands on their fishing vessels and to take control of the islands. And since then, China has used them time and again to bully its adversaries on the high seas. Now look at this report. It's from 2016. It shows a large number of blue fishing boats in the Henan province. The report has further said that this province serves as the headquarters of the Little Blue Men. They function below the radar and they help China maintain deniability about its actions. The web of their activities is pretty big and wide, from Henan's coastline to the Paracel Islands, to the Spratly Islands, to the Taiwanese Straits. They function along a widespread maritime route. And according to reports, China also deploys them in three separate ways. Number one, they move in swarms to obstruct the freedom of operation of an adversary. They did this in the case of USS Larsen when it was deployed near the Spratly Islands back in 2015. Secondly, they're also used to land troops and supplies on disputed island territories. And thirdly, they used to undertake espionage, surveillance and support operations for the Chinese Army and Navy. The legalities for conventional naval forces in dealing with the maritime militia are complex, especially due to the nature of these vessels. You see, fishing vessels have a distinctly civilian appearance. And as per international law, they are not targeted during conflicts. But China's little blue men have ever blurred the lines. While displaying overtly civilian character, they transition into military behavior when undertaking activities in support of China's naval operations. And this can prove extremely difficult for naval commanders to assess and to deal with. It also complicates the rules of engagement that need to be issued to naval and coast guard forces to tackle such non-traditional threats. This is why these little blue men continue to thrive. But the Philippines is not taking it lying down. In a recent press conference, it has now openly called out the illegal activities of these militias. And it has urged the world to join it in opposing them. Listen in.
The National Task Force on the West Philippine Sea, led by National Security Advisor Eduardo M. Año, strongly condemns the aggressive, dangerous, and unlawful actions by the Chinese Coast Guard and Chinese maritime militia vessels against Philippine-chartered supply boats and Philippine Coast Guard vessels who were undertaking a regular rotation and resupply mission in Ayungin Shoal last Saturday, August 5, 2023.
The Chinese side has responded to the Philippines, but what is interesting is that it has made no mention whatsoever about the little blue men. Instead, it has continued with its rhetoric of territorial sovereignty in the South China Sea. So what does one do in this kind of a scenario? How does one deal with China's deniability? Should the world, of course, start treating these fishing vessels as legal combatants? Should the world start acting against them the way that they would against a Coast Guard vessel? Now, these are questions for which there are no immediate answers, but the fact that China is resorting to the use of these private militia groups on the high seas is something that military strategies around the world will be watching very closely. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.